talk to your motherfucking roommate. You better talk to your pill-popping roommate.
Match point. Not pill-popping roommate.
This is getting juicy.
Like, what kind of pills?
Okay, this just took a turn. I did not see this coming.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, the Brooke Ashley, and today we are here to discuss The Real Housewives of Atlanta, Season 16, Episode 16. And before we get into it, let me just say, the last 15 minutes of this episode gave me Love and Hip Hop. I had to run that back at least 3 times because I was gagged. I said, wait, we're going there? Kelli and Brit both showed out, but I have to be fair. Kelli, you started the whole entire thing being passive-aggressive at that showroom. And Brit is a clear example of when you go low, I take it to hell, because that's what she did. And we will be talking about that cheap stunt that was pulled at Kelli's cooking class, because no ma'am. And hey Marcus, because I know that you watch me, you hit me on Twitter saying, hey Brooke, love your channel, and for us to stay tuned because more comes out in the finale episode next week. So I shouldn't be too hard on you, but I'm sorry, Marcus, this felt like somebody on the cast put you up to this. And why would you do this at somebody's event? That's just so rude and so tacky, but we'll talk more about that later on. But y'all, this episode had a lot going on, so without further ado, let's get right on into it because you guys already know that we don't have a minute to spare. So we open up the episode with Shamia. She's with her girls, Shia and baby Shiloh. They are just so adorable. Now, I don't have too much commentary on this scene, but I will say, I thought it was a bit weird when the producer asked Shamia, why is Shia's face always so greased up? And I said, well, clearly this producer isn't black, because in black households, it is not uncommon for you to be greased up and moisturized, okay? So I just said, yeah, I was kind of surprised by the question, but I digress. But like I said, I don't have too much to say. I was happy to hear that baby Shiloh is doing better. So that's all that matters. As long as the baby's health is good, I'm happy to hear it. And when it comes to Shamia bringing up the topic of having a son for her husband because he deserves that, again, I don't have too much commentary on that. You guys have heard my thoughts in previous recaps, so we can just move on. Now, y'all know I've been whacking Phaedra every chance I get, but this scene with her at home and her boys, I loved it. Phaedra, more of this and less of the confessional shade, being nasty towards Drew and Angela for no reason, and instigating mess. Because you at home with your sons was so enjoyable to watch, and your boys are lovely. Seeing how Dylan and Aiden are 14 and 11, I said, wow, time really flies. But we see that Phaedra's boys are with their mentor, and her youngest son, Dylan, is making these pants. I think they were snakeskin cargo pants, and they look good. It's clear that he has a real talent and a passion for making clothing, and that's beautiful to watch. We cut to Phaedra's confessional, and she says that she's been busy raising her 2 young kings, and we find out that Miss Phaedra Parks has 11 jobs. She says that she's still in the funeral business, a mortician, and she's also a certified Reiki healer. Now, I remember her saying that on the previous season of Married to Medicine, but one thing about it, Phaedra keeps a job. So we see Phaedra sit her boys down and tell them that she's having this super exclusive black glove event at her showroom called The Vault. Now, I never viewed Phaedra as one of the fashion girls, so I was shocked to hear about this showroom. But Phaedra tells her sons that she's having a presentation and she would love for her son Dylan to showcase his pieces at her event. And it was so cute because Phaedra was like, well, can you make some pants for me so I can wear them? And Dylan was like, no, Mom, like, you're doing too much now. I just said, oh, I said, Phaedra, you're going to have to order your pants like everybody else. Your son said no free pants over here. So now we jump over to Kelli, and it's the day of her court date. So Kelli is hoping that she will finally be divorced by the time she leaves the courthouse, right? So she says that today's a big day. She is anxious. This is where they decide on the financials, division of assets and properties, and custody agreements. So there's a lot going on. So we see Kelli with her team. She pulls up to the courthouse, and we see that cameras are not allowed inside. So now we jump to 4 hours later, and Kelli is visibly defeated. So obviously things went left. It did not turn out the way she hoped. So we see Kelli back at home with her publicist, Lamont. He pours her up a glass of wine, and Kelli expresses disappointment because she's still not divorced. So we find out that Kelli and her ex-husband went over the time limit, so the judge gave them a continuance. So she's obviously upset. The fact that Kelli's been dealing with this for 3 years, and this is a clear example of why it's so important to vet your future spouse, especially as a woman, because the fact that this man put her through hell during their marriage and now after their marriage. Well, I saw in the after show that today, currently, she is officially divorced. So thank God for that. So we see Shamia come over to check on Kelli, make sure that she's okay. And she's like, hey girl, what's going on? How are you feeling? And Kelli says, we're still not divorced, and he went to jail today. So we find out that he's in jail because he didn't pay child support. And I said, Kelli's ex-husband's second home must be jail, because it seems like he's always in and out of jail. He can't stay away. So Shamia can't believe what she's hearing. And now Kelli reveals that he only paid child support to get out of jail the first time. I said, my God, Kelli, who the F did you marry? Because this man seems like a deadbeat through and through. And I will never understand the mindset of a deadbeat. You sleep well at night knowing that you're not providing for your children? So Shamia's trying to comfort Kelli. She's like, you'll be okay. It's just a test. And Kelli says, how many more tests do I have to go through? So as they're talking, Angela calls to check on Kelli, and she's like, hey Kelli, how did it go? I know you had a big day, just checking on you, want to see how you feel. So Kelli tells Angela the bad news that she's still not divorced and her ex went to jail again. So Angela says, I'm sorry to hear that, and now she gets off the phone, and now Shamia goes on to ask Kelli if she's heard from Brit. So Kelli says no, she hasn't spoken to Brit since Grenada, and she says that it's disappointing. She says no call, no text, no nothing. And then she goes on to add that she was with Brit during that whole Kenya situation, and the fact that she can't even get a call, a text, a flower, a candle, she's upset. Now, let me just say this. Even though they're not on the best of terms as friends right now, I do feel like Brit does owe Kelli some kindness and a phone call, at the very least. You could say what you want, but Kelli really did ride hard for Brit during that whole Kenya mess. She walked out of Kenya's salon in support of Brit. She came to Brit's house the next day with food, champagne, and she even paid for the personal IV drip. So we know that Kelli spent some money. I know I might get some pushback, and that's okay, it's my opinion, but I do feel Kelli. I know what that feels like to always be there for people and they're not there for you, right? I'd feel a way about that too, especially if I've been there for you, I've taken you out for dinners, my treat, sent over cards, flowers, dinners to your house. Now when I'm going through something, even if we aren't on the best of terms, I still feel like you can call me up or send me a flower or something. I'm just saying. Even a text, hey, I know things are weird between us, but just checking on you to make sure that you're okay. Simple. And before anybody says, well, Brooke, Kelli did do Brit dirty in Grenada, I get that, but let's not forget that in the last episode, Brit did try to clear things up with Kelli. They had that conversation. At that point, everything was good and cleared up between them, right? So Brit is low-key wrong for not reaching out because her and Kelli did leave the trip on better terms. Even though things might have still been weird, they did have a conversation. Brit let Kelli know that Kelli dropped the ball and made her feel a type of way. Kelli received that, and they seem to be okay. If I think that we're okay, despite a stumbling block, I would expect for you to call me if you heard some troubling news that I'm going through. Just saying. So we see a short scene with everybody getting their invitations for Phaedra's event, and Phaedra says that her event is going to be exquisite. She's going to be displaying all these fabulous furs, real furs, faux furs, chinchillas, everything. So it's going to be a time. Now I have to say, Phaedra, 2 points for you because those invitations were everything. I loved how everybody got a black glove. I said, okay, you did that. So now we jump on over to a Cooking with Kelli class at Williams-Sonoma. Now we find out that Kelli's been a brand partner with them since 2019, and I think she went on to say that this was her 7th event with them. I said, well, go ahead, Kelli, I know that's right. So anyhow, Kelli's invited Angela, Phaedra, and Drew. Now, was anybody else surprised that Shamia wasn't there? Because aren't Kelli and Shamia newfound best friends? But anyway, Kelli says that she invited these 3 women because they were building a bond in Grenada. Now, mind you, Charles Oakley is also here because he's doing a cook-off with Kelli to see who has the best bananas Foster waffles. Now, a quick side note, did anybody peep how excited Phaedra was to hug Charles? I said, that's why you keep throwing shade at Angela, because it's giving a slight crush. I mean, Phaedra got up out of her seat. She was like, oh, you know, I haven't seen you in a minute. I said, okay, girl, you like Charles, don't you? Now, y'all know I whack Charles and his very dry personality and the lack of affection that we see on camera between him and Angela. But I have to say, he was actually pleasant in this scene. It was actually really fun to watch him. I said, Charles, could we see more of this, please? He was so in his element cooking. It was really nice to watch. Charles was also fun to watch in the clubhouse because Angela and Cynthia were the guests on Watch What Happens Live, and Charles was the bartender, and he was actually fun. I said, okay, Charles is actually pleasant sometimes. Won't he do it? So the competition begins to see who can make the best waffles, and we see Kelli walk over to Angela, Drew, and Phaedra, and they're asking her if she's talked to Brit. So Kelli says no, and they're all surprised to hear that. And Phaedra's like, aren't you guys best friends? And Kelli says, yeah, we are, but right now I have to focus on me. Now, the way Drew had me screaming, Drew says, obviously something's not right in the waffle mix. Kelli, what's happening? Spill the tea. And I said, exactly, because they're too busy all up in your business, but yet when it comes to Kelli and Brit's friendship being on the rocks, now everybody's tight-lipped about it. You can say what you want, but Drew and Angela have been carrying this season on their backs. They've been the most transparent out of everybody. So now we jump to a parallel scene at Brit's house. And Portia, this Dolce & Gabbana outfit, yes ma'am, ain't down. So Cynthia and Portia are both teasing Brit. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm here at Brit Edie's house. Portia says, this is a very sacred invitation. And Brit's like, oh my gosh, stop it. Like, please stop. So they go downstairs in the basement, and Brit, I'm going to give you 2 points for trying. You had a bottle of Veuve. We love some good champagne, but the spread needs work. Miss Mamas, it feels like you have a real issue with feeding the people, because you tried, but this spread could have been a lot better. I was waiting for some prosciutto, hummus and pita chips, some olives, some feta cheese, grapes. I mean, I wanted to see a real charcuterie spread, and we didn't get that. We saw a bag of pretzels, some veggies, and that was about it. I know you're off the show. You've burned all the bridges over at NBC Universal, Bravo, so you won't be coming back. But in your real life, off camera, please invest in a good spread when you have folks over, please. But 2 points for you having some champagne and a literal bite to nosh on. If you are ever a guest in my home, just know that you will be fed. I always tell folks, please come hungry, because there's a nice charcuterie spread, and I'm gonna order some food. Bar cart is fully stocked. You will be fed and drunk. You're gonna have a good time. I take pride in that. So Portia says that they were on good behavior on the trip, because usually when they're all together, somebody's always bickering. So now Brit brings up the drama between her and Kelli about the whole glam squad situation. So Brit says that Kelli told her team that they can't work with her anymore And Portia's like, wait, what? Why? And Brit says, well, apparently Kelli felt away. She felt like I was getting the better looks in Nashville. So production plays the flashbacks of Nashville, and they're comparing the looks side by side. Kelli's looks versus Brit's looks. Now, everybody's style is different, right? One person might think that Brit's style was better. Another person might feel like Kelli's had the better outfits, right? So it's subjective. But I will say, Kelli, if you felt a way about Brit getting the better looks, that's on you, sis, because you insisted that she use your glam squad. So you got to take that L on the chin. That's why it's best to let everybody find their own teams on their own. So there's no drama, there's no confusion, and this could have been prevented had you not insisted that Brit use your team in the first place. But Brit says that she was very disappointed when the glam team called her up and told her that they could no longer work with her anymore. And now we cut to Kelli's confessional, and she owns it. She says, yup, I did tell my team to stop working with her. Kelli justifies it by saying that the fact that Brit wants to work with everybody on her team, it's giving weird, it's giving not that girl. Again, Kelli, I could see if Brit went after your team on her own, but you gave the green light when you said, hey girl, I want you to use my team. So this is all on you. So for you to act like she's being a copycat or weird, I don't know about that. And don't get me wrong, I'm quick to call somebody out for being a copycat. It's like, you know, you can find your own team the way I found my own team, right? I get that. But in this case, it's not that situation. You introduced Brit to your team. You gave the green light. You gave the go-ahead. And that's why Brit thought it was okay to work with them. And even your castmates have said on the after show that introducing Brit to your team was a mistake in the first place. So Portia makes it clear that there can be no jealousy. And now Brit calls out the double standards because we find out that even though Brit can't work with Kelli's team, Shamia can. So we learned from Brit that Shamia's been getting private shopping sessions with Kelli's stylist. Now, I'm going to need Kelli's stylist to elevate Shamia's looks, because Shamia has had too many misses as a full-time housewife. I feel like Shamia is still stuck in the 2010s, and I need her to come up to 2025. So Brit, here's where I have to just whack you, because what you did right here was so incredibly messy. So Brit says that it's not her place to get in the middle of things. And then she says, I mean, if I'm gonna hold it down when it comes to her sidebars about you. And now Portia interrupts and she's like, wait, she's talking about me? Because me and Shamia already had a conversation. So now Brit reveals that Shamia has showed her text messages between Shamia and Portia. So Brit brings up a text message where Portia was telling Shamia what her attorney said to her about the divorce, how she needs to focus on herself. So Portia lets us know that that was from her therapist, not her divorce lawyer. So now we cut to Portia's confessional and she says, for you to tell somebody what my therapist told me in a session, that's crossing a line. Now let me just say, Portia is 110% correct. That's a violation. And we'll talk more about this later on in the recap. But that's why I've become super private. Like, I just don't think that it's beneficial to be pouring your heart out to even your friends because of things like that. Keep very personal matters to yourself. Because the fact that Shamia would sit up there and show Brit personal text messages that include what Portia's therapist told her in a session,
you done lost your damn mind. When you get your damn mind, you call me.
And Brit trying to act like she was so concerned. I said, Brit, stop. You're being messy as hell. Because that whole comment about, is that what a best friend should be doing? I said, okay, Brit. It's clear that you wanted to put a wedge between Portia and Shamia and make things worse. And I feel like misery loves company. The fact that you and your best friend have fallen out, now you want to create the same division between Portia and Shamia. And now we cut to Portia saying, here's what I'm going to say about that. Do what's best for you. So now we jump right back over to Kelli's event, and it's time for them to decide who has the better waffles. Now, hold on, Kelli. I went on your website the other day to order some waffle mix. Did you take it off of your site? Because all you have now is the cookbook and the grits. Aren't you the chicken and waffle queen? Where is the waffle mixes? So as they're eating, we see this random man approach Angela, and we find out that his name is Marcus. So he's like, "Hi, Angela, can I talk to you in private about something off camera?" And Angela's like, "Who are you? Like, what's your name? Do I know you?" And Marcus says, "No, you don't know me, but I know your husband. He comes to my restaurant." Now, Angela had me screaming because we cut to her confessional, and she's like, "Who are you? And who gave you the license to come and speak to me?" I said, "Not the license."
I'm not Maya. I'm 62 years old. I have lived so long and tried so hard that a young woman like you or any other you have no license to come up to me and call me by my first name.
So Marcus finally walks away, and Phaedra's like, "Who was that?" So Angela's like, "I don't know, never seen that man a day in my life." And I already knew that Marcus was on some BS because the way the camera kept panning to him, I said, "Oh, okay. He's going to say something in just a few minutes," and of course he did. So the competition is over, and Kelli says that her and Charles are both winners. Now, a quick side note, did anybody notice that the general manager of Williams-Sonoma came up to Charles? I wouldn't be surprised if we end up hearing about a Charles Oakley cookbook. And if you guys do take that idea, I want my 10%. So now it's time for the toast, and remember how I said that Marcus was on some BS? So he says, "I want to do the cheers. Cheers to a woman named Angela. Your husband's cheating on you."
Where we cheers it to? I got a cheers for it. Cheers if your name is Angela, your husband's cheating on you.
Oh, no, whoa. We're not doing that. No.
Everybody's like, "Excuse me, what?" I said, "Really? At your big grown age, you decide to do that?" So security comes to escort him out the event. Everybody's still in shock. And I really felt bad for Angela because you can tell that she was really blindsided by what happened. She's there to support Kelli, have a good time. And now you have some random talking about, "Oh yeah, cheers if your name is Angela, your husband's cheating on you." Excuse me? And Marcus, it's no shade. We spoke on Twitter. I have to just whack you because why would you do that? And you told me that you got paid for that, but was it worth it to go out and do that? Like, that's just cruel. It's really mean. And I'm sorry, but it just gives thirst and desperation to be on TV. So Phaedra's like, "Woo, child, the devil is a liar." So now we cut to her confessional, and the producer's asking Phaedra if she thinks that Charles is stepping out on Angela. So Phaedra's like, I don't know. And honestly, it's against my religion to be in people's business.
Excuse me. I just said it's against my religion to tell you my business, okay? I'm fine. Thank you.
I said, "Really, Phaedra? All you do is throw shade, give us the same one-liners, and spread people's business." So Angela says, "I'm just trying to keep it together because I don't want to make a scene and get my husband involved." So Kelli makes it clear that she had no parts in that. She says, "I don't know that man. I would never allow that. I just want you to know that I don't support that. Again, I don't know that man from a can of paint." Now we jump back to Brit's house with her, Portia, and Cynthia over, and they all of a sudden get a call from Miss Phaedra Parks. So Phaedra's like, "Oh, child, I just left Kelli's event, and baby, I have some tea. Hold on to your panties. This man came up to Angela, and he told her, 'Your husband is cheating on you.'" So they're all like, "Wait, what? Oh my gosh." And Phaedra's getting so much glee from all this mess. Now, if you follow me on Twitter, then you know that I believe that Phaedra is behind this whole stunt. This whole thing screamed Phaedra Parks. The fact that Phaedra was so eager to tell that to everybody else, and then it's not lost on me that Phaedra has been throwing so many digs towards Angela since she came back on the show. Then the constant digs about their marriage, how she had no idea that Charles was married, and then her going on to say that Charles is too much fun. There have been so many innuendos about Charles stepping out. And we also didn't forget how Phaedra did Candy in season 9. So again, it's not far-fetched for me to think that Phaedra did not have a hand in this. And Phaedra also looked guilty, trying to act like she was concerned about Angela when that happened. For her to say, oh, the devil is a liar. She's trying to act concerned and act, upset. But secretly, she was happy. The eyes don't lie. And we're also way too deep into the Housewives bag for us to be seeing cheap stunts like that. That kind of thing would have been salacious in the earlier seasons. But we are now closing out on season 16, approaching season 17. And that's the best you can do. That stunt fell flat. And Marcus, I'm sorry. I hope you got paid a nice amount, because was it worth it? So now it's the day of Phaedra's event at the showroom, and we see her getting ready. So Phaedra expresses that she needs the women to come on time because they're not the only important guests coming. She has other very important people too. So we see Phaedra doing a walkthrough with her event planner, and now she gets a call from Portia. So Portia looks visibly upset, and she lets Phaedra know that she won't be in attendance tonight because her cousin Londi passed away. And rest in peace to Londi. My condolences to the family. And I remember how Londi seemed super sweet, and she was definitely one of the bright spots on Portia's spinoff show. But again, my heart goes out to Portia and her family. That's a huge loss, and rest in peace to Londi. So now it's 2 hours later, the event has officially started, and the guests are all arriving. So we see Kelli arrive first, and we find out that she's actually rented some pieces from the vault before. They have some cute things. And now we see Cynthia, Angela, and Shamia arrive. So at one point, Shamia looks at Kelli's bodyguard, and she's like, we're going to be safe tonight, right? And now Angela jumps in and says that she's the one who needs security. So now Kelli brings up what happened at her event the other day with Marcus walking up on Angela saying that Charles is cheating on her. So Cynthia says, oh yeah, Phaedra told us about what happened the other night. And Angela says, let me tell you what happened. I don't know that man from a can of paint. Like I said a few minutes ago, I believe in my heart that Phaedra was behind Marcus approaching Angela. So now Brit arrives, and Brit looked good. That bob, the dress, she ate. Like 10s across the board. And I said this before, I think we all feel the same way, but Brit Edie does look just like Nicki Minaj. I mean, they could really pass as sisters, first cousins, but Brit definitely favors her, for sure. So anyhow, Brit says hello to everybody, including Kelli, and Kelli ignores her. So Brit says again, hi Kelli, and Kelli continues to pay her dust. So we cut to Kelli's confessional, and she says, the fact that I rode so hard for you, I even paid for an IV drip to your house, and you can't even check up on me and my kids, that's not a friend. And like I said earlier in this recap, I definitely understand Kelli in that regard because I feel hurt too. I've been there for you in more ways than one. I've supported you. I've brought food to your house, champagne, probably paid for some dinners, sent you a card, bought you flowers. I'd feel a way if I'm going through something and you can't show up for me. So I get why she's hurt. But in my opinion, Kelli, this made you look a bit immature and very passive aggressive, because if I were you, I would have said, Brit, I'm not feeling you right now. I'm a bit annoyed that you didn't reach out to me, but can we talk about this another time? So that way she knows that I'm annoyed with her, but the whole rest of this evening does not have to be awkward. So Angela tells Brit that they were in the middle of a very interesting story, and Brit says, ooh, a lot of stories to tell. So here goes Kelli being even more passive aggressive, and she says, ooh, I can't wait for story time. So now we cut to Brit's confessional, and she says that she's disappointed in Kelli. The fact that Kelli couldn't tell her how she felt initially about the Glam Squad thing, it's upsetting because they could have worked something out, but now Kelli just looks like a hater. So now Phaedra announces that the presentation is about to start now. She says it's 7:02, let's lock the doors. And now Cynthia says, wait, Portia's not here yet. So Phaedra says, well, she's not coming, but we'll talk about that later on after the show. And then Phaedra brings up how Drew Sidora, her favorite person on this cast, also told her that she was running late as well. And we all know how Phaedra feels about Drew, so it was no surprise when we saw that Drew actually was locked out of the event. So right before the show starts, Kelli walks up to Angela to let Angela know again that she had no parts in Marcus coming up to her. She says, here's the thing, I opened that event up to the public, and we know what that brings, fans and random people who want to come to these events. Now, Kelli, I believe that you had no parts in this, but be clear, one of your castmates is behind all this, if I had to guess. So Angela makes it clear that she did her own research and that people don't play about her and her husband. I said, I know that's right. So she goes on to say that her people paid Marcus a visit and they found out that Marcus was paid to be there. Well, nobody's surprised, Angela. We knew that. So Angela goes on to say that Marcus gave them the description of the gentleman who paid him to do that. So we see that it's about 7:15. Drew has finally arrived and the doors are locked. She can't get in. So she's like, I even texted Phaedra saying that I was going to be late. I was stuck in traffic, just so she knew that I wasn't lying. So we see the text message of her saying, Phaedra, look at this. I'm stuck. I don't know what's going on. And I thought it was really messed up of Phaedra to not just open the doors. It just feels like the women go out of their way to embarrass Drew, and I just don't like it. So here's where things pop off. We cut right back to everybody else in the showroom. And Cynthia says, I find it interesting that that man went out of his way to tell Angela that message. So now Kelli jumps in and it's obviously a clear shot at Brit. And Kelli says, I wonder who paid him. Maybe the people who didn't show up. And I said, Kelli, these subs aren't it. If you're going to pay Brit dust, then just pay her dust. But you want to give her the cold shoulder and then try to shade her every chance you get? That's not how this works. And I'm sorry, Kelli, but nobody believes that Brit put Marcus up to do that. That definitely screamed Phaedra, in my opinion. We saw that Brit had a hard time feeding the folks at the country club, and she even struggled with donations to people in need in Grenada. So I highly doubt that she's spending money that she does not have on people pulling cheap stunts like that. So everybody's confused, and Cynthia's like, wait, who didn't show up? And now Kelli starts throwing shots at Brit. So Brit's like, listen, girl, we were all at my house the other night. So Kelli's being sarcastic, and she's like, oh, wow, Brit had you guys in her house? And Cynthia says, yeah, I was there. And Brit says, yeah, Portia was there too. So Kelli's still being sarcastic, and Brit says, you can address me, Kelli. I know how hard that is for you. So Kelli's like, it's not hard for me to address you. And Brit says, yes, it is. You're very passive aggressive. So Kelli says, I'm not passive, I'm aggressive. I said, Kelli, I hate to break it to you, but you're not giving anybody fighter vibes. Like, let's be so for real. So I don't know who Kelli thought she was scaring. She says, don't play with me, I'm the mighty wolf. I said, Kelli, that's the best you could do? I said, I'm sorry, Kelli is giving very much Disney Channel. The Mighty Wolf, really? So Brit says, Kelli, you're so insecure. And Kelli says, oh, really? I'm insecure, but you want to use my entire team? And Brit says, girl, stop. You're very insecure because you're the one who was upset that I got the better looks in Nashville. You were second to me. I said, ooh. I said, all right. I said, okay. I said, all right, we're going there. Now, Kelli, I need you to take some ownership because, Miss Mamas, things went from bad to worse when you said this right here. So Kelli says, let me tell you something, ho. You better talk to your pill-popping roommate. I said, girl, we're going there. Are you sure you want to do that? That was uncalled for, in my opinion. Brit says, the stylist told me that you look a mess. And let's talk about all those abortions you had during your marriage.
The stylist said you look a mess, so keep it up. Unless you want to talk about those abortions you had when you was married. What did your daddy start? What did you say? Bitch, you can't even have a kid. You could never be me, bitch.
I said, my God, today. And you could tell that that really hurt Kelli because Kelli was pissed. We have folks holding her back. She's like, what did you say? You can't even have kids. You can never be me, bitch. I said, ooh. Now, I know that that is a real low blow to bring up somebody's personal choice like that. And we all know that Kelli was in a horrible marriage where police were called constantly, right? She said that to us in the first half of this season. There is no judgment coming from me whatsoever. Let's be so honest. We all know that if somebody takes things to hell, you need to be prepared that the other person might come back and go even harder. That's the risk you run when you run your mouth in an argument. A lesson that I've learned, that's why you need to be careful about who you tell things to. Keep some things to yourself. Me personally, the only person I know I can tell everything to besides the good Lord is my mama and my sister and brother. I know that there's no judgment. I can talk freely, and I know that my secrets will never be spread to anybody else. It will stay between us. When it comes to friends, sorry, my lips are sealed. You're getting very shallow, surface level, or if I do tell you some secrets, it's some stuff that I don't care if it gets spread, right? Because the tea is so stale. It's not juicy like it once was. I'm over the situation. It doesn't matter if you tell other people. I make sure to tell people stuff that I won't care if it gets back out to other folks. Everybody is your friend until they're not. And I know folks like to act like, oh, well, you know, I've fallen out with people and I've never told their secrets. I'll bet you money that if that person were to start spreading your secrets, you would retaliate and tell what they've told you. So again, we can't act like what Brit did was just so bad when we've all been there in some shape, way, or form, where somebody tried to spray you with your own tea in the words of Funky Dineva, and you did it right back. A cautionary tale of be careful what you tell folks, because it will be used against you when folks are mad and you guys are no longer friends. And I do want to add another point. Brit, I have to just whack you quickly, because for you to have all this mouth throughout this season and then for you to skip out on the reunion is giving coward, because you had the most to answer for this season. And the fact that you did not want to own up to anything that you said or did is really shameful. And that's why I can't be too invested in this argument, because we're not getting any closure. Brit skipped out on the reunion, and then she's suing the network for $20 million. So I'm not going to harp on this argument because it doesn't even matter at this point. But we can tell that Kelli was super hurt by Brit saying that. And she says, first things first, my body, my choice. And second of all, I got my tubes tied after the twins, so I couldn't even have a baby if I wanted to. So the fashion show finally starts, and we see Drew is still outside. She's trying to get in. She's knocking on the door, and Phaedra refuses to open up those doors. I said, this is so petty. Phaedra, there was no reason for that. You just find any way to embarrass Drew. Now, I will say that Drew being locked out and trying to get in reminded me so much of Mary Cosby on this last season of SLC, when she was late to Meredith's bat mitzvah and she was trying to find the door. That reminded me so much of that. The security guard was sweet. He offered Drew a chicken wing while she was outside waiting. I said, child, Drew is better than me, because I would have went right back home. So now it's 7:55 and the doors are finally open for all the late people to come, and Drew is finally inside the showroom. Now, Drew, I've been praising your looks and your outfits this season. It's been a vast improvement, but this ensemble for Phaedra's event, girl, I didn't think it was flattering on you at all. I said a sexy black dress would have been perfect. I don't know what those shorts were. I said, Drew, I'll give you this one time, because overall, this has been your best season fashion-wise. But the fashion show isn't over yet. We see Phaedra's sons come out and they're wearing Dylan's pants. I was just like, wow, that is so amazing. And shout out to Phaedra for really believing in her boys. And it was so touching because Phaedra got emotional. And I said, again, Phaedra, you might work my last good nerve. But when it comes to us seeing you with your boys, perfection. Now, shout out to the good folks on Twitter who pointed out that we saw Dylan's fashions before we got She by Sheree. She by Sheree took 14 years and it's still nothing. Sheree is the definition of pure laziness, because it's a real shame that we are seeing Phaedra's sons come out with a fashion line before Miss Sheree Whitfield. And Aiden was like, we're doing pre-orders right now on the website. I said, I know that's right. I said, I might have to place an order and support, because they did that. So the fashion show is over, but it's now time to shop. So as they're shopping, we see Shamia pull Brit to the side, and Shamia wants to know, why hasn't Brit reached out to Kelli? Because Brit knows what Kelli's going through. So Brit says that she can't be a fake bitch. The fact that Kelli has been talking about her, that's not a friend. So that's why she did not reach out to Kelli. And yes, I understand that Brit's feelings were hurt, but Brit, Kelli did ride real hard for you in the first half of this season. And despite you guys having an issue, you could have said, hey girl, I know we're not on the best terms right now, but sending you some love, hope all is well. So now we close out the episode with Phaedra gathering all the ladies together to tell them the news about Portia's cousin Londi passing away. Now, when the camera panned to Shamia's face, it was clear that Shamia knew nothing about that, because she was shocked and then she broke down and started sobbing. I said, yeah, Shamia didn't know about that. But Phaedra goes on to say that we may fall out, but we're sisters and we support each other. And that's where the episode ends. This was definitely one of the most explosive episodes of the season. I'm looking forward to the finale because I want to see how this plays out with Marcus approaching Angela and Charles getting involved, because you know he's not here for this BS. I want to find out who set Marcus up to do this, because I have my suspicions. So we're going to find all that out next week. But guys, that was my recap. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for listening on the podcast. And you already know what to do. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all later. Bye.